Ruslan.
Somebody asked about felons not being able to have firearms after the fact. So that's the part, like, if someone's a felon, if someone was a violent criminal, if someone has a history of domestic violence, right? Where are you at with that kind of stuff? Because that can get very dicey, right? On like who is and isn't allowed to do certain things, or there's a certain amount of time have to go by. You know, like what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, first you said felons at first. So
yeah, felons. Yeah,
felons is not the same thing as violent criminals.
Okay, fair enough.
So I want to make that distinction. I'm not trying to be like
no, that's good.
I'm just saying that because when a lot of people will say felons and they just automatically think, oh yeah, they definitely shouldn't have firearms. Like,
yes.
Okay, but look at the law and the war on drugs and how most felons these days have a drug history if they do. And by the way, it's not just things like that. There are a lot of people should read the book 3 Felonies a Day. And if you read that book and you don't realize that you probably have already committed a felony in your own everyday life already, based on the laws in the books these days, and there are a lot, then you'll realize how easily it is to actually put yourself in that category. And most people who feel like they're other than, it's easy for them to say that, oh, they shouldn't have their rights. But honestly, regardless if you think they should have that right or not, they still do. Now, obviously, there should be protections on that, because once someone is harming you in your life, that's them actually infringing on your right for life, and that's a different thing. But everybody, like I said, has a human right to defense and to protect themselves. Here in Texas, actually, and in Georgia, after 5 years, after you've done after your jail time and you've actually finished all of your parole afterwards, probation, you are actually able to regain your Second Amendment right and are able to keep a firearm in your home for self-defense. So anyways, all that to today, that's usually state by state. But for the most part, when people are talking about that whole conversation, they're talking about felons, and they're forgetting that most felons are nonviolent, and they should have a right to get their Second Amendment protections back.
What about folks that have been violent in the past?
Yeah, if they've shown in the past that they obviously can't use something and use it for something that's not evil, then obviously, yeah, they've already forfeited that right.
So you would say
legal terms.
That would be some of the regulation you do support, is if someone has been violent, if someone has committed robberies or domestic violence, then you would agree with some form of regulation on that type of person.
I would agree that if it's already on the books and that person has already forfeited that right, then that's something that they've already given away. So
it's folks who have mental health issues. If a person with mental health issues desires a gun, they should be required to take medication. That's because what mental health issue are we talking about? Are we talking about bipolar? Are we talking about schizophrenia? What is your thoughts on that? Folks who have like a psychotic disorder, in light of the conversation we're having now, how do you view that? Like, do they need to show a degree of responsibility? Like, how do you process that?
I've grown a lot in my understanding when it comes to mental health, because, like I said, I'm a sexual assault survivor, which very, very hard. And you said that also you were a survivor. Very hard for someone, particularly someone who's 5 years old and sexually assaulted, not to have some type of mental health issue, depression, anxiety, which I still am dealing with today. That's a lot of women who have PTSD because of sexual assault. A lot of men also. I mean, think about veterans, PTSD. Like I'm saying, all of those would be considered with the government as someone who would be considered dangerous to have a firearm. That's what we're looking at right now with red flag laws. That's a whole other conversation, guys. I would love to come back and talk about that because there's a lot of nuance on that. That's the whole mental health conversation that we're having with red flag laws. Just know that most of the time, these are not just dealing with some person that you're probably never going to met, because you don't know anybody who's mentally unstable, or you don't know anybody who's having issues with PTSD. But for the most part, you do. Very most part you do. And I would go off to say that more than likely it's you and there are more people who have issues that would be considered mental health issues in the gun space like that would nix you from being a part of firearm ownership. So anyways, all that to say is that there are a lot of people who deal with that issue, and the government would consider a lot of those people dangerous when it comes to having a firearm.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, when I went to therapy, that was the diagnosis they gave me was that I had onset PTSD from being molested as a kid, and I didn't really understand that. I didn't have a definition for it, and I'm glad I got a definition for it. But that I definitely think that probably changes even my frame of thinking on it to say, well, shoot, by that logic, like, and I didn't take medication or anything like that, right? So by that logic, would somebody then tell me that I need to be medicated right? And I don't think pretty sure I don't need medication, right? I just try to eat well and sleep well and work out. So that's interesting.
But it should be your choice. The thing is, it should be your choice if you need medication or not.
Yeah. Thank you so much for making it through the end of this video. If you enjoyed it and maybe you're feeling inspired to jump into some YouTube creator content, maybe you're an expert in the field, I have a super dope course coming very soon. No, it's not a $5,000 or $1,000 mastermind course. It's gonna be extremely affordable. So that's on the way, but we wanna give you guys a free training and PDF that's available right now. So be sure to opt into that in the description below or in the cards. Joshua the King came down and bore it all. Yeah. Conversations front of the fireplace. All of my mistakes, how do I erase? Wanna operate at a higher pace. Birth pains causing the body to dilate. On a first name basis with the worst pain facing. Moments in isolation. See, I was hoping I would do this to get more family time. A busy mind and worried heart is just not where I reside. I subscribed that all that traveling wasn't doing well for my soul. Glad I never made it when my name went through the rumor mill. I suppose that the Lord knows I'd have failed. Instead, I'm doing well at home, out my shell. Good book off the shelf, more dubs off the L's. I told Ray they ain't just gon' know us, they gon' know us well. Happy to have failed my way to success. With my family by my side, Lord knows what's next. Joshua the King came down and bore it all. I know a few things, never claimed to know it all. But I know it's off, never noticed y'all. Hit a protocol, need an overhaul. Need an overhaul, I need an overhaul.